Hello, bonjour and bonjour. It is a radiant summer day and I'm outside a railway station in Rouen, capital city of the French region of Normandy, about an hour and a half northwest of Paris.
Because the time has come for me to tell you one of my favourite ever stories about France, which is that at one point, the French deliberately moved every single clock in every railway station 5 minutes behind the real time.
And crucially, I do mean in every railway station, because the clocks on the outside of railway stations were left alone. So today we're asking the question, why on earth, or at least in France, would you do that? There is an old expression in France that translates something like this: those who kiss too much miss the train. And right from the very beginning of the railways in France, there was a big problem with people missing their train. To be fair though, lazy stereotypes were not the only reason this was happening. It's also because the railways ran on Paris time, but the rest of the country back then was still functioning on local time. In Rouen, for example, the local time was 5 minutes behind Paris, and as a result, passengers would arrive for their 2 o'clock train at 2 o'clock Rouen time, only to find it had already left 5 minutes ago.
Ah merde! Excuse my French.
This was happening so often that some French railway companies began the practice of holding trains back a few minutes just to make sure more passengers made it on board. But by the 1880s, cities all over France are beginning to drop local time and move over to standard Paris time, which you would think solves the problem. But actually, it made things worse.
For a start, some French cities are much quicker to make the move than others. So while Rouen does it pretty much straight away in 1880, the city of Le Havre, just downstream from here, they don't do it until 1881, a whole year later. And meanwhile, over in Besançon, in the east of the country, well, they refused to move to Paris time until 1890.
On your average train journey in 1880s France, you could be going from local time to Paris time, to local time to Paris time, to local time to... you get the idea. The situation was even more confusing for passengers than it had been before. And faced with a mounting pile of complaints from their customers, the French railways decided they needed to do something. So, would you like to guess what they did? Yes, in 1887, the French railways took every clock in every railway station and moved them back by 5 minutes. The idea was that all trains would now operate on this 5-minute delay, giving late-running passengers an extra 5 minutes to catch their train.
Ah, super.
And meanwhile, no one could complain about the delays because, technically speaking, the trains were still running on time. It's just time itself was now 5 minutes late. So, in some ways, they had made things easier for passengers. And in other ways, they'd done the opposite. Effectively, the entire railway system was now in its own separate time zone, 5 minutes behind Paris. And that was bad enough in Rouen, where the city had recently moved to Paris time, only to find that the railways were now running on the old Rouen time. But meanwhile, over in good old Besançon, where, just to remind you, they still haven't moved to Paris time yet, people were now having to deal with 3 separate time zones: local time, Paris time, and the new 5-minute delayed railway time. So, was the 5-minute delay genius, or was it madness? Personally, I find it very hard to tell, but the fact is, apparently, it worked. In fact, it worked so well that the Belgian railways heard about it and decided to copy the idea. Except that in Belgium, no one could agree on how long the delay should be, and so their trains end up running either 5, 7 or 10 minutes behind schedule, depending on which company you're travelling with.
Anyway, back to France. Because presumably this was only a temporary solution, right? You only needed to do it until people got used to the new system. And by 1891, the whole country was on Paris time, even Besançon.
And with the whole country now on Paris time, you would think there was no longer any reason for the railways to keep their 5-minute delay. Except there is one small problem. The French public have now got used to the idea that trains always run 5 minutes late. So what do the French railways do? They keep the policy in place for another 20 years. In the end, French trains continue to run in their own little time zone, 5 minutes behind the rest of the country, right up until 1911. And it's only on the 11th of March that year, when the French government announces that Paris time itself is going to be shifted back by 9 minutes and 21 seconds in order to align with Greenwich, that the railways finally take the opportunity to scrap the 5-minute delay.
And since that day, French railway clocks have all run on Paris time. The trains have all left perfectly on schedule, and there is no longer anything confusing about French railway stations.
And if you'd like to visit Rouen, see its beautiful historic centre, and then miss your train home because you thought 3 came after 1 and 2, the city is about an hour and a half from Paris on a regional express train from Saint-Lazare station, and it is easily doable as a day trip from the capital. Meanwhile, the old railway yard I visited is about a half-hour walk from the centre of Rouen, out in the southern suburb of Sotteville. I'll put a link in the description. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.